Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Very excited for this. We're back with another video from Annie News. We are on the final cut content video for MUSHOKU Tensei Season 2. I absolutely loved MUSHOKU Tensei Season 2, and I've also really loved checking out these cut content videos along the way, seeing what's been missed, what's been changed, or potentially what has been rearranged. But yeah, what a journey, and yeah, I loved the last episode. I thought it was boss, and let's see what was potentially left out.
Sylphie was able to do what Eris couldn't. Not only was she able to help Rudy in a way that she herself found meaningful, but she was also able to come to terms with being the partner to someone who's so incredibly exceptional.
Oh, I love her. I love her so much.
It's a core part of being with Rudy that Eris handles completely differently. That's something we'll talk more about towards the end of the episode, but in order to get there, we first need to cover the journey there. The process Sylphie and her friends came up with, and the smaller details of it that didn't quite make it into the anime. Let's get started.
Right.
Episode 36, I Want to Tell You, covering chapters 10 and 11 from Volume 9 of the light novel, and
So again, 2 chapters like normal, cool.
chapter 1 from Volume 10.
Oh, right, so it's I stand corrected, 3 chapters.
With Sylphie having just made her declaration of love, Rudy's mind raced to comprehend the revelation that was just made apparent to him. At first, he was overwhelmed by happiness, but it was shortly after that he began to think of Eris.
Oh.
He began to wonder if he had ever told her that he loved her. Here, Sylphie was telling him that she loved him, so what if the reason Eris left was because he didn't reciprocate that love?
Ooh. Ooh.
Perhaps not saying it directly was the root cause of all his problems with women. He knew he wasn't quite at that stage with Sarah, but things were definitely different with Sylphie. So, as much as Rudy wanted to take time and think carefully about how he truly felt, he knew hesitating now may lead to Sylphie's departure too. He felt not responding to her love right here and now would just lead to her disappearing like all the others.
Damn.
That's why he responded the way that he did immediately. Now, Rudy was so concerned with not messing things up that by the time he'd laid Sylphie on her back, the problem he'd thought he'd solved had returned again.
No.
The two would continue to try for over an hour, but
God.
nothing they did could get Rudy going again. It was a devastating turn of events that made Rudy incredibly depressed. So much so that he just felt like crying now.
Oh, bless.
You see, this wasn't the same as those times with the girl from the brothel or that adventurer he'd hit things off with, but was instead a crucial moment with someone he loved. It was a person he truly felt he had a special connection with.
Yeah, so it's going to mean a hell of a lot more.
So, to not be able to perform at a time like this, Rudy couldn't even turn to face Sylphie. No. Instead, he just sat there trembling, waiting for the moment she would express her disappointment or just straight up leave.
God.
Of course, Sylphie, being the saint that she is, immediately shifted the fault to herself.
Oh, she's too nice. She's far too nice. Oh, God.
You see, despite being almost as devastated, Sylphie believed that this was all happening because of her body. Since Luke had warned her numerous
Things Luke said.
times
man.
before, she truly believed it just wasn't in the Grey Rat bloodline to be attracted to a body like hers, leading Rudy to explain that it wasn't that.
The more flat-chested.
This formal, apologetic nature that he resorted to was actually an automatic mode he slipped into whenever he wasn't thinking straight, not knowing it actually created distance between him and the person that he was talking to. Rudy wondered if Eris and Richard felt the same, but for now he was just going to avoid doing so with Sylphie.
Isn't it weird that we went the whole season without those two as well? Like, I was expecting them to come back at some point, or I was just like, I missed those adventures, but this season's been boss.
So, a little while would pass before the two would say anything again, but it was once they did that Sylphie would share her story. From where she teleported to how she became Bits, all the way to her job as Guardian and their journey to Renoa,
What an
Sylphie
adventure
explained
she's been
how
on,
it is
yeah.
she ended up here. It was when Rudy suggested that she should have revealed herself earlier that immediately tears would start flowing as she apologized for not doing so.
Oh.
Clearly, Sylphie was in anguish from the fact that she had to hide it for so long. There were definitely times when she wanted to reveal herself, but with her thinking that he'd forgotten her entirely, there was always the risk that he'd go and tell someone the truth about her, especially since he did have connections to the Boreas family. So, despite Sylphie wanting to make herself known, the mere possibility that Rudy could have been an enemy was more than enough to prevent her from doing so. She also kind of liked the way things were between them.
I mean, it was quite chill and nice, wasn't it? She had someone to talk to, hang out with, get like that companionship thing there. She's not quite to the extent that you want.
It was when a few pretty girls started to enter into his life, though, that's when things started
The jealousy started creeping in.
to change between them. Sylphie became worried that one might just snatch him away from her. Rudy didn't think that that was likely, but it was definitely possible if, say, Nanahoshi magically found him some sort of cure or something. The extreme gratitude he would have felt towards her very well could have turned into something more. Luckily it didn't, as Sylphie's operation
Thank
would
God.
prove successful. Now, an interesting subplot that was going on the entire season was Ariel's efforts to make Rudy her ally and Sylphie's attempts to prevent him from doing so. I'd mentioned it in an earlier cut content, but Sylphie didn't want Rudy joining Ariel simply because she wanted him to be hers alone.
Yeah.
She didn't want to have to share Rudy with another woman. So, when Rudy had asked whether she or Ariel had set up this plan, Rudy was relieved to know that it was Ariel who had. To him, it was an act of kindness that made him think perhaps he could ally with her after all. Sure, he definitely didn't want to get mixed up in dangerous power struggles, but if part of that meant helping Sylphie, Rudy was happy to offer whatever support he could.
He's down to help his woman. Hell yeah.
Of course, Sylphie couldn't just outright reject that, so rather than dismiss his offer straight away, she simply told him not to force himself. She said how she'd be happy to have him on her side, but she also warned that getting mixed up in politics wasn't something he would want either. It was the most she could say to sway Rudy's decision right now. Now, the last thing Rudy had said before leaving the cave was a heartfelt thank you from which Sylphie was confused by. She didn't quite understand why Rudy was thanking her, but for Rudy, he was just happy that things were starting to work for him again.
Hell yeah.
So, with that bringing the conversations in the cave to an end, the next 3 days would be spent getting back to the university. It was a lengthy journey in which one of the core topics of conversation was Rudy's story. Sylphie had come to learn about the girl who had abandoned him, and it was the way that she tossed him aside after escorting her all across the demon continent that made Sylphie think if she ever met her, she'd definitely give her a talking to.
Oh, okay, interesting. God, I don't... It's a bit odd that he went into that conversation, but okay, at least he's open and honest about everything.
You see, the way Rudy phrased the story made it seem like Eris left because he wasn't good enough. Of course, we know that to be just Rudy's personal misconception, but
Yeah.
that was enough to make Sylphie dislike Eris. That said, Eris's actions were the very reason the two could even be together here. So, at the very least, there was some good to come from it. It was as the two would part ways that Sylphie would contemplate all that had happened so far. She was definitely on cloud 9 knowing that the two were dating now,
Hell
but
yeah.
she still couldn't get over how Rudy didn't really seem interested in her body. It's a recurring issue that Sylphie is constantly thinking about. They didn't really show it in the anime, but it's actually her main worry throughout most of the final episode. Fast forward to Sylphie's meeting with Ariel, and Luke's interjection would be quite the big deal here.
Luke was such a dude in this episode, man. He was like, nah, I understand now. I get why. Oh, I can't let him go through all this pain and suffering. I know how to help him out, because I am a man. And I was like, yes, God. I liked him in this episode. He really came through in this episode.
You see, not only was it rare for Luke to defend a man, but he had actually never blatantly opposed the princess before. Sure, he'd occasionally offer his advice, but to straight up dismiss Ariel's opinions and counter with his own was something Sylphie had never seen in the numerous years she'd been working with him. Thus the reason both her and Ariel were quite visibly
I love that. It's like, what? What?
shocked by it. It was when Luke had returned with the aphrodisiac that his absolute savagery would lead Sylphie to an all-time low in her confidence.
No.
After hearing how no Grey Rat
Sylphie is not curvy enough to tempt a man with a body. Oh no.
would ever be attracted
The Naruto's Grey Rat family are traditionally attracted to women with large breasts. As a case in point, I myself feel attracted to Sylphie. So it's like, oh,
to her body,
mate.
Sylphie truly
You can try to seduce him with your body, it just won't work.
believed
Stop it!
that she would never
Stop
be
it!
able to seduce Rudy with it. Luckily for her, Luke's solution was something he'd been holding on for some time now. An extremely rare potion he had managed to pick up back in Fatoa. In total he had bought 5, but with only 2 used and 3 left over, Luke had no problem giving one to Sylphie.
Oh, right, okay. Doesn't make... I thought he was giving away something really, really rare. Like, but he has others. And I'm guessing he doesn't really need it anyway. It's just something that he just keeps on to us for those extra fun times. But yeah.
As for Ariel's gift, this was a gesture just as generous as Luke's. I know 2 gold may not seem like a lot, but with all the princess's money being reserved for the war fund, this 2 gold was actually all of her own personal allowance.
Cool.
It was everything she could possibly give under the strict limits that she'd set for herself. So, with 2 gold and an aphrodisiac, Sylphie's closest allies had united to fight against Rudy's impotence.
Let's go!
Now, I'm sure some of you may be wondering whether anything was cut from the night of, but from the moment Sylphie arrived to the morning after, everything down to the individual words spoken were exactly the same.
Oh wow, that's cool. Okay, cool. I'm glad we didn't see the action either, because it was. I liked the whole like, but did they? Did they? And then the whole and then I liked them. I think he's going to go into it, and this is what I picked up on when Rudy sees that she's gone, and then he touches the sheets, and he starts. I feel like he went back to when Eris left him, and then when Sylphie came back, he realized things were different now, and that's why he hugs her and gets all upset, because he thought he was going to go through the same thing again.
It's when Rudy wakes up
There we
that
go.
the setting for his contemplation is made a little bit different. You see, rather than waking up to find that Sylphie wasn't even there, Rudy simply awoke and kept himself facing away from the other side of the bed. He couldn't bring himself to check and see if Sylphie had left or not. He was fairly
yes, here we
convinced
go.
that she did, though, since he was confident the night before was worse than the night he'd spent with Eris. There were several times when he could tell that Sylphie was in discomfort, but the way she just kept urging him forward only went to make him more excited. So, knowing exactly how rough he was last night, Rudy was fully expecting Sylphie to abandon him just like how Eris did. When he turned over to find her eyes meeting his, though, that's when Rudy would express his heartfelt gratitude to her. It was the only thing he could do considering everything that she'd done for him. Not only had she cured the problem he'd been carrying for over 3 years now, but she also didn't leave him when it mattered most.
I like that. I like that a lot. But I personally prefer the way the anime did that. But that's still really nice. That's really nice.
So, just in case saying something more might change her mind, Rudy simply said thank you and hugged her tight. Now, that's how things were from Rudy's perspective, but it's in the novels that Sylphie's gives us an interesting contrast with Eris.
Okay.
You see, before when the two were back in the cave, Sylphie didn't understand why Rudy had thanked her. It wasn't until he had thanked her again now that she finally understood why he did. He was thanking her because she'd helped him. Though she didn't realize it before, Sylphie now knew that she'd helped cure his impotence. So, despite knowing that she wasn't equal to him in things like power, magic, and all his other amazing aspects, through all that she'd still managed to support him. Through all his astonishing feats and stunning achievements, Sylphie was finally able to give something back to him for once. It was a dream she'd long been striving for years now. So, yes, there may be things that she'd probably never be equal with him in, but that was okay because she knew she could find other ways to support him. It's a stark contrast with Eris, who could only think of one way to support him. Whereas Sylphie is content by helping through other means, Eris won't consider herself fit for him until she truly is his equal. Unless she can help by providing power similar to his own, Eris won't ever accept being with Rudy the way that Sylphie does.
Right.
That being the case, it's rather interesting to see how two different characters react to what's essentially the same problem. Like, they both have to deal with being a partner to someone who's so unbelievably extraordinary, yet the way they go about it is completely different.
Different, yeah.
One's accepted the fact that Rudy's power is unattainable, while the other departs on a path to make herself equal to such. One's content knowing that she can support in other ways, while the other won't be satisfied until she can support in the only way that she knows how. It's a beautiful cross of two beautifully written characters. An amazing portrayal of the people closest to Rudy. Now, it's hard to say whether the ending scene was just a lead-in or a full adaptation of Chapter 1 of the next volume, but the important part was Rudy joining Ariel's party. Yes, him marrying Sylphie was important too, but his pledge to Ariel has a lot more repercussions than his engagement to Sylphie does. I don't think we'll be seeing much of that in the next season, but as soon as Zenith's saved and the university arc is finished, Ariel returning to Asura is what I think is going to be the next big arc. I'm sure we're on our way to a lot more action and a bit less slice of life.
Cool.
Now, for those who went into this season expecting the same stuff as Season 1, let me know what you thought about being finessed into watching a slice of life anime. If it's something you enjoyed and watched till the end, then I'm sure myself and many others can provide you lots more slice of life recommendations down in the comments. Just let us know and we can definitely hook you up with some. For those of you that don't want to admit it, I'm sorry to say that that's pretty much what happened. So you might as well accept your newfound love for a new genre and start watching Snafu next. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this video.
Wow.
I know it took a bit longer than normal, but I had gone away from my sister's wedding, then got a bit sick after.
Oh, bless.
Luckily, it was between seasons, so that 1 week off really does help a bit. If you're wondering what I'm going to be covering next, it'll probably be Eminence in Shadow, but I also might mix in some Shield Hero and Goblin Slayer.
Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. I'm watching all three.
If any of those sound interesting, then be sure.
I caught up with Eminence in the Shadow and I love it so much. And, see, that first episode of season 2 is absolutely boss. Goblin Slayer, Shield Hero, the opening episodes were class. Oh, bring it. Can't wait.
Sure to subscribe and let me know down in the comments. Now, as always, thank you so much for watching it. If you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time. Ciao.
Wow. Boss. Cool. Awesome. Wow. Yeah. That was really nice to see. It was nice to see the difference between the way the anime and the manga and light novel did, how Rudy found that Sylphie was still there. I prefer the anime's way though, because she was gone and he's like, and then she runs in and he's like, ah. But you know, cool, awesome. Really liked it, and I can't wait to see cut content for Eminence in Shadow, or potentially Goblin Slayer, or potentially Shield Hero. That first episode of Eminence in the Shadow was really, really cool as well. So yeah. Anyway, make sure you check out my Etsy shop. Go buy my t-shirt. It's awesome. Helps support the channel. I love it. It's great. And thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month for support channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click a like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.